Welcome to episode 104 of Rubbish Talk with me, Alasdair.
And me, Heather McLaughlin.
Welcome, Heather. Nice to have you on.
Lovely to be here.
So another guest, so second guest in a row we've had. So we like to keep our listeners interested and not very sure what's going to happen from week to week. So Heather, you are the campaigns and social innovation manager for Keep Scotland Beautiful. So this is probably a long overdue guest from Rubbish Talk. As you know, myself and Jane like to rant about litter and fly tipping. So welcome. Can you maybe let us know, listeners know a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Keep Scotland Beautiful?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely long overdue. I think most of the team at KSB will be listening to the podcast and sharing your frustration, I imagine. So my role is the campaigns manager at Keep Scotland Beautiful. So I look after the team who deliver our campaign work. A lot of that does focus on litter and waste, and it includes the actions we deliver as part of the National Litter and Fly Tipping Strategy, but also programmes like Clean Up Scotland and the annual Spring Clean happening right now.
And tell me a little bit about Keep Scotland Beautiful as an organisation. It's a charity, I believe.
That's right. We're an environmental charity, and we're sort of working in communities across the whole country to improve the places that we live, work and visit. And we sort of tackle the sort of range of environmental problems, whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's improving nature and biodiversity, or the role I'm in looking at litter and waste.
Yeah, and I believe as part of that, you've got some sort of, not duties, but there's certain things KSB sort of take the responsibility for in Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in terms of litter, we are the administrator for the national monitoring programs, and we are a core partner working with the government and other partners on the litter strategies. So both the litter and fly tipping strategy, but also the marine litter strategy too.
So taking a little bit of a step back, Heather, how did you get involved in this? Where did you start? Did you leave school wanting to get into litter and fly tipping and waste management? Or
I didn't, and I'm hoping more people might start wanting to do that. I studied biology and sort of found my way into the sector through a short program doing sort of door knocking for a council, asking about recycling behaviours, and then working for a council on a new waste sort of scheme, I guess. And then through that, joined Keep Scotland Beautiful as a community projects officer. A roundabout way, which I think is quite common for these sorts of roles, because you don't learn about this at school or at uni even. You don't know these organisations exist and that there are people working behind the scenes often on waste.
I share your thing about biology. My favourite subject at school was biology, and I actually wanted to go to university and do biology, but my sister thought, my big sister thought it was a crap idea, that there wouldn't be many jobs at the end of it, and she convinced me to do environmental health, which was basically the first year of that course was the same as a biology course effectively, and it was done on the basis of go and do that, and if you like it, it's fine, you stay on it. If you don't, you can switch to biology later on. And
Exactly.
I never actually got around to switching, so I did environmental health. So which university did you go to?
St Andrews. So I actually went to do psychology and I changed to biology.
They were very active. What was the logic there? Do you not like psychology?
I didn't. I found myself just being more interested in the biology stuff. But I think interestingly, my current role uses both. We do some of the sort of nudge and the social behaviour stuff, but we're working in the environment and trying to improve the environment.
I used to, for a few summer holidays, I ran the little windsurfing school at East Sands at St Andrews. And I got to know quite a lot of the biologists and I'm going to embarrass myself here. I can't remember the proper technical name for the people that investigate sea fish and fish and so on, marine biologists.
Oh, yes.
So I got to know quite a lot of the ones who were doing their PhD there at the marine place.
I actually, my whole residence was Albany Park, which sat on East Sands. So very familiar with that. Well, familiar with that area.
Well, I sat in my car for many days, but it wasn't often enough you could sit outside and stay warm there, I'll tell you. So looking back, in your journey to where you are now, any sort of career highlights, anything you think now that, I actually really enjoyed that time, just going out, knocking doors, getting to know what people thought, or no, I absolutely hated that aspect of it. Any thoughts?
It was tough. I mean, it was in Aberdeen, so there was lots of tenements, lots of flights of stairs, and it was about communal waste. So it was always tenements and high rises. But I do think in the role that I'm in now, the value of understanding what goes into roles like that, and having worked then for the council, understanding the sort of how difficult things can be sometimes for councils and the processes and how they're set up is very
Mhm.
valuable, I think, for working in this sort of sector where we're trying to work with them and nudge them along in certain ways or trying to change how they're delivering services or whatever. So I think it's all helped. It's all helped, really.
And when you went on the doorstep, what sort of reaction did you genuinely get? Did you get people that, did most people have an opinion, or did some people not really care what you were trying to do?
I think, well, once you said you're there on behalf of the council, you get a certain sort of reactions, and it was then trying to keeping them focused to what we were actually
Yeah.
there for. We're not here to talk about anything but the recycling schemes and things. But usually, people once you explain why and what the scenarios are, they understand it. And I think a big part of this is people do like to understand what's going on. I think we try and simplify things too much sometimes, and people just actually want to understand why it's
Mhm.
got to where it is and how we see it changing. So usually it was fine. It wasn't major apologies and walked away.
I always feel with I know I'm going slightly off topic here, but with the sort of recycling service, I think we've sort of last 10 years or so, we seem to have failed to do that sort of education piece with the public and saying, this is why you've got these bins. This is how you
Mhm.
use them to the best of your abilities, and this is the problem you cause if you don't do the right thing. And we seem to have forgotten that, but we seem to just assume it's all going to work perfectly in the background.
Yeah, and I think it's. I mean, I would say this, and your listeners will agree. It is fascinating, but I do think we forget that some other people would find it fascinating too. Like seeing, it was when the Suez
Yeah.
sort of facility was opened up. So seeing how that all worked and how things
Mhm.
were segregated, I think more people would be interested than we might give them credit for. Yeah, I'd love to be doing more to sort of highlight what actually goes in from your doorstep, where it all goes or where it all should go, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So you touched on this that your current role. What are your main responsibilities, if you like? What are the main things you're trying to address?
Yeah, so we look after some of the actions that Keep School Beautiful have under the National Litter and Fly Tipping Strategy, under the Marine Litter Strategy, but then also coordinating sort of some of our own programs around cup recycling and reuse, and generally supporting community groups and people across the country tackling litter on the ground.
Okay. Okay, but before we move on to specific KSB things, anything in your career up to date that you've had a disaster that you're willing to share with us, or you managed to recover, but you
Well,
think,
yeah,
oh
well,
goodness, why did I do
that's the
that?
way to look at it, isn't it? The way that I've recovered. I think I did when I left uni. I think I took a punt that I know some people were a bit like, 12-week contract, are you sure? But I think I would encourage people to do that at that stage of their career. And that first door knocking consultation project was 12 weeks, and it was moving back up to Aberdeenshire. And someone sort of said to me, "Is that worth it? Is that a good idea?" But it did actually lead
Yeah,
into a job at the council,
yeah.
which I think has led to where I am now. But it was, yeah, taking those sort of risks. I was at a time in my life where that was possible, and I was able to do that.
It's so much easier. I always say to the young people, if they're not in a job, it's so much easier to move from a job to another job, and it doesn't particularly matter what that job
Mhm.
is, as long as you're in a job
Completely.
to step on. So I'm not quite sure these 12-week opportunities are still around actually as much as they maybe used to be.
No, maybe not. And that was probably a long one. I think there's maybe sort of 3, 4 weeks here and there, but 12 weeks was pretty chunky probably.
But even then, I know we've been short of staff for waste analysis jobs, and we've taken people on for like a week, and then they've told us they've been quite upfront. They've got interviews booked in and all the
Mhm.
rest, and then turn up at the interview and explain what they've been doing, and the interviewers are absolutely fascinated by what they've been up to, and they ended up getting a job. There's a young graduate that came to us many 10 years ago, and he now works with SEPA. And every time I see him, he reminds me that it wasn't on the back of us he got the job, but it's the fact he was
Mhm.
able to say I was doing waste composition analysis, and that sparked an interest with interviewers, and they were able to and it came across well.
Yeah,
So
people are so
yeah,
interested in it. When I say I work for Keep Scotland Beautiful, go, "Oh, that's lovely. That sounds great. What does that mean?" And you say it was an environmental charity. Yeah, cool. Okay, what is it you actually do? And you say, "Oh, the slightly less glamorous world of litter and waste," and they go, "Oh, litter," and everyone has an anecdote or a bugbear they then raise. So it is definitely a sector that people are like, "Oh, yeah, that really annoys me when this happens," or and we've done bin analysis too, and whenever I say that to someone, they go, "Ooh." Oh, but I bet that was interesting, and it
why are you
is.
doing that?
Yeah, exactly. What did you see, and
Yeah,
what was the
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So as promised, obviously myself and Jane are normally fairly vocal about litter, fly tipping, waste crime, all these different things. So let's dive in a little bit deeper about KSB responsibilities, if you like to call it. So first one I'd like to talk about is LEAMS, and I'm going to put you in the spot here to tell our listeners what LEAMS actually stands for.
Yes, right. So this is the local environmental audit and management system. So the "and" is not part of the acronym. So this is the national
Yeah.
monitoring sort of scheme that we administer, working with councils across Scotland to monitor local environmental quality indicators. So it's litter, but it's also weeds, detritus, dog fouling. It's sort of all those things in one.
And how in practice, how does it work? Because it's not necessarily KSB that does that audit, is it? I believe it's local authorities work with other local authorities.
It's a bit of both, yeah. We so local authorities will do their audits, but we also do the independent verification of those audits. So we have staff at Keeps Going Beautiful who are out doing surveys year round, who will work with councils who are also doing surveys, and then we analyse the national data set and provide reports for
Yeah.
local authorities, but also looking at sort of national trends as well. So there is both sides, and I guess we do sort of look to see if there's a big difference between what we're seeing and what they're seeing, and we do make sure that anyone doing audits are trained fully. And we try and limit then how many people are doing it. So there's a bit of consistency across our team and local authorities teams.
Mhm. And how long has that been running? It's been running for quite a long time, I think, isn't it?
Yes, I've been at Keeps On Beautiful for about 8 years now, and it significantly
Yeah.
predates me. So the beauty in LEAMS is that it's such a big data set spanning so many years, so we can really see those trends. But
Mhm.
whilst we've got those trends, we can still adapt it and change it and add categories. So I think there's a beauty in it
Mhm.
being consistent, but also being flexible as well.
But from a public perception, I think the general view is, and I think some of your data showing that littering is effectively getting worse and worse and worse, and public are generally quite concerned about it. How effective it's good to monitor, but is that monitoring been turned into action, if you like?
Well, I think this is something that we need to get better at. And I think historically we've done the audits, we provide the report, we identify some of the sort of generalities across Scotland in terms of what items and behaviours and sources. But what we want to do, I guess, within LEAMS and at a local authority level is actually work with the teams to say, well, this with technology advancing, this can be live. You can be looking at this every week and downloading reports and using that to target services. And so I think we're working more to sort of use it day to day rather than just an annual report that says litter's getting worse. These are the items that we're seeing most often, which won't surprise anyone. And what we're going to do about that. So I think there's more we can do with LEAMS. There is limitations of it, and we could
Mhm.
bolster it more by using that resource that's already going out doing surveys.
Is it, I know talking to councils, they find it really challenging, but it's budget wise, it's cut and cut and cut. And it's also you could drive down the high street and sweep and clean the high street at 6 o'clock in the morning. A busy Saturday by lunchtime it's back to where it used to be.
Mhm.
So the public don't necessarily see the change it's been.
No, absolutely. And a big part of sort of what LEAMS should be doing, I guess, is showcasing how quickly some of these areas can accumulate litter and the frequency schedule. What we're also looking at, I guess, at the moment, like I think everyone is AI and how that can support this, and maybe designing the software and tool that will allow every vehicle that councils are using to identify it live, so that you can deploy teams. We're seeing a lot of councils investing in sort of deep clean squads, that are focused on those areas and to try and improve them. So I think that's where we can be, hopefully, see it, react to it, and keep it as clean as possible. And that,
Mhm.
we talk about the broken window effect. That's all part of what this needs to be.
my personal big gripe at the moment is roadside litter, and they've done some tree management work on the road from effectively Ayr to Glasgow, and the amount of litter at the side of the road is just appalling. Is there any plans to do anything there in terms of, because the technically the people that are maintaining roads are responsible for clearing that litter, but they don't appear to be doing it, or they're not doing it often enough.
No, and you're right. Roadside litter. I think the two main sort of inquiries we get, or complaints, I guess, we get from members of the public is roadside and the school rush. And
Yeah.
roadside is one of those things that, is so dangerous. It's so much more expensive to tackle than litter anywhere else. And it is, I don't think I fully understand this yet, but the major roads in the trunk road network have road operating companies sort of managing the vast majority of issues on them. But in some cases, they might have the responsibility to cut grass or manage trees, but it's a local authority that still has the responsibility to litter pick. And that, for many, doesn't make much sense. Or for it to actually work, needs that coordination. And we sometimes hear about, road operating companies going, okay, this is our grass cutting schedule. This is when we'll have traffic management in place. And the council can go, great, we'll deploy the team on the same day. But there's other cases where that's not happening. And you see people cut grass and it cuts up the litter, makes it 10 times worse. So I do think there's quite a lot of movement in this space, and a lot of councils going, what is the actual way this should be working? How can we work with operating companies effectively? The contracts are currently in place, but at what point are they up for renewal? And should we at that point be thinking about what's the best way? Should the operating companies have the full responsibility? Should the councils? If it is separate, how can you make sure it works effectively? This is a big area of issue for us, and we're doing a lot of campaign work to try and prevent any of this having to be done. But really, we need to clean it up and prevent it at the same time.
Surely, from a litter strategy point of view, this is something Scottish Government, the operating companies, councils need to get together in a room and just sort out once and for all. And I know, talking to South Ayrshire, and they're responsible for the litter at the side of the road. The problem is if they try and put a closure in, the operating companies say, no, we can't put a closure in. So they're left with doing exactly what you say. When there is a closure in, they're then scrabbling around trying to get crew out to pick up litter. And it's not ideal that the people that control the closures are not also responsible for
No.
the litter that's
Yeah, and the other thing that I find sort of that needs to be sorted out, I guess, is the road operating companies can sign off risk assessments and have their crews on roads without closures. So I was driving to Glasgow at the weekend, and I think it's Bear of Scotland that manages the M80, were out without a road closure, litter picking. They can get that signed off. My understanding is, or I haven't spoken to a council who's been able to do that. So again, if it's the operating companies that can sign off that risk assessment to make it a little bit easier and save money on road closures, should it be that they have the responsibilities? Or how can they support councils with understanding, the risks and mitigation measures needed to be done to have crews on the roadside safely?
But I suppose if we look at the other side, if people didn't chuck their crap out a car window, we wouldn't need to pick it up off the road verge. So,
No,
I
absolutely.
think my logic is, on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon, we should shut the M8, and we should put the big sign up saying it is shut for litter picking, and it's going to be shut until all the litter's picked, and we're going to inconvenience as much as possible, because unless you stop dumping litter, we're going to keep shutting this road.
And
And
I
make a
do
big
think
campaign about it, and change
completely.
that behaviour, because you only need to look at the state of the roads. There's people obviously putting a lot of litter out of the car.
And I do think for me it is that, there's an environmental impact of litter, but I think people are more motivated by you telling them there's someone risking their life. It's costing thousands of pounds to close roads, and we're going to close it and make you go 30 miles an hour on up somewhere you're meant to be going 70. We want to be talking about that. Last week we were on the roadside on the A1 with a closure in place to see what it was like.
Well, I cycle, run, walk along road verges, and they're all shocking. In most roadsides, you could pick up a bag of litter within 100 yards. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
across the country. Doesn't matter where you are. Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Which is
That's rural
brilliant.
roads and main roads.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. there we go. I think we're in agreement in that one.
Yes.
I personally think there's lots more. Scottish Government as the organisation that issues the tenders to these operating companies could do. If you're contracted to cut grass, you're not contracted to cut up the litter as well as the grass. And they've got a responsibility, I would suggest, to get that litter cleared before they actually cut up the grass.
Yeah, whether that's them doing it or whether they need to be working more closely with the authority to do it completely.
Yeah, and work together. Well, what's your thoughts on that? It's obviously fairly hot off the press, the new UK government announcement about penalty points, seizure of vehicles. I think the penalty points was maybe relating to fly tipping rather than littering, but they seem to be joining the dots a little bit, but saying if your vehicle's caught fly tipping, then we're going to either issue penalty points, seizure of vehicles. And I think from what I saw, it seemed to apply to Scotland as well. So any thoughts on that?
I don't think it does apply to Scotland, that one. I think
Well,
quite a
that's what I
lot.
wondered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we might need to do some research ourselves. I didn't think that one did apply to Scotland. We have different legislation that includes sort of, in Scotland, we still can't issue FPNs when we see litter chucked from vehicles, whereas in England and Wales they can. And so that's something that we're really trying to work with the government to nudge through. It's been agreed that it's going to be a thing, but they still need to do a consultation and implement it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that does apply to Scotland. If it did, I think we need to see more deterrent. We need enforcement to be doing more in tackling this issue. And I think the issue is the enforcement itself is broken. That process isn't working, but also people know that. So it isn't even working as a deterrent to individuals. So I think seeing, whether it applies to Scotland or not, seeing these things getting discussed and seeing that people are taking it seriously, and it could be that they lose vehicles or have a bigger FPN applied to them, is really, really important, and hopefully shifting toward that deterrent that enforcement should be.
And where's that sitting at the moment? It's in the litter strategy, isn't it? But it's in someone else at the moment.
Yeah, it was part of the
It's
Circular
happening,
Economy
the
Act.
Scottish Government.
So my understanding is it's sort of ready to be. I think it needs
Mhm.
another round of consultation with sort of councils to understand how it would work, and that will hopefully come in after the
Yeah.
election this year, so that we can start applying those FPNs to registered keepers.
So that when you say I was going to pick up in the consultation, but it's consultation with councils rather than consultation with the public.
Oh no, so I think it'll be an open consultation. I think I don't know the answer to that one, Alasdair. Sorry, I think it might, because there'll need to be duty bodies.
Yeah.
No, I think because at the moment only councils and the national park can issue FPNs, so it applies to them and how they would do that.
Mhm.
Whereas I guess if it opened up, it actually should be, do the road operating companies want to have that responsibility, and does anyone else?
Mhm.
So I think, there's definitely a round of consultation. Whether it's open or not, I don't know.
Yeah. No, all I was going to say about the consultation is that to me, if you're chucking someone out the car window, you deserve a fixed penalty, and we shouldn't have to consult on that.
Yes. Yeah, I don't
You should just say
disagree.
that's the rule, and
Just do it.
don't consult, because you're going to get lots of people complaining. I don't like that idea, because I'm going to get fines.
Mhm.
I walked up the street yesterday, and a woman straight out at the car window, her cigarette butt, and drove off. And I sort of looked at her and pointed at her, and she knew full well what she'd done. And it was just
Okay,
like,
so it wasn't a subconscious act.
like, no, it was a definite. They opened the
Mhm.
window, checked it out, and then sort of drove off, and then she tried to sort of not quite hide her face, but she knew exactly what I was pointing at.
Mhm.
And it's just like, how do we change that culture where it's just so easy to drop to drop stuff on the ground? I don't quite understand it, if I'm being honest.
No, I know, and I think that's roadside,
Yeah.
but there is, people talk about, across even just parks these days, people having a picnic, and maybe they bag it up, but then they might leave the bag. And there's something I think we need to do, not just with roadside litter, but about reminding people that we all have responsibilities. Local authorities don't have the budget to have litter pickers out, or if they even have litter pickers. So I think there is something sort of society-wide that we need to do to remind people that we all need to take care of the places we're living in or visiting.
Yeah. I think that whole thing, I don't think people realise quite how much it costs. And I think most people would rather it was spent on something more productive than picking up litter. I did last summer. I did some, as you maybe know, I walk along the beach to work, and after a busy sunny weekend, Ayr Beach is a bit of a bomb site. And I walked by these bins, and I did a bit of a TikTok video. All these bins were actually half empty, but people had started putting sideways. They were lifting their rubbish off the beach, and then they were putting it beside the bin rather than in the bin. And what the seagulls in there are doing, they're masters at it, is they peck through the bag, and then they scatter the bag all over the street. So every bin had this pile of rubbish that had been pecked. So in a sense, the public had done the first part of doing the right thing by bringing it off the beach, but then
Yes.
they'd actually failed to put it in the bin. And you think, come on. And then the post ads, you got half the comments where people should be doing, you put it in the bin, and another half where council's not doing their job
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And every single one of them, I replied back and said the bin was not full.
Yeah. No.
But they're still not doing their job right. And I'm like, no, the bin wasn't full.
And that's one things we get is, oh, we need more bins out there. But the reality is there's instances where there's loads of bins and they're just not getting used. So no, completely. Yeah, we see that a lot. And I think as soon as one person does it, everyone then assumes the bin's full and does the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually point that because I got so many comments that the next morning I was walking along the street and the registered vehicle was actually working behind me and then the tractor was on the beach cleaning the beach.
Oh, wow.
And there'd been so many comments the day before, people saying the council aren't doing it. They're never there. They're never doing it. And I'm like, it's just you're never down that beach. And here's the video of them doing it. You know, and then they were like, still not enough bins. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, it's costing so much money, and I think it's probably never going to cost zero because of monitoring and the odd piece that will accidentally be littered. But I think it is all that money should be going elsewhere. Councils are investing in this service, not enough, we would argue, but it is still a hefty investment onto something that doesn't need to exist. We literally just need everyone to stop dropping it, and that could save a lot of council and other duty bodies and volunteers time.
Yeah, I know. Going back to South Ayrshire, they've got the bins with the solar panels and the compaction that talk to you, and the amount of political grief they get for putting these bins in. And if you talk to the council, it's like they compact the waste. We need to collect less. So there's less cost to go and do the collection. The kids like it because they get a wee hello and a thank you type thing. In terms of what it actually does to the service, in terms of save money, it's really positive. But it's been used as a political football because to buy them initially they're quite expensive, and it seems mad.
It does. I think that there is this thing about is investment for the future to hopefully change those behaviours. And if kids are enjoying using them, that behaviour might be ingrained. Part of the code of practice, and it was as long as it was 2018 now it came in, it had like a big focus on prevention and sort of recognising investment in prevention, allowing councils and a little bit longer to respond to any issues. And I think that was quite a big step in going, your service should just be about servicing this problem, servicing the waste. It should be about investing in behaviour change or new infrastructure that might or might not work. I mean, there's some councils out there who are saying we want to try something new, and if it doesn't work, that's kind of okay so long as we're capturing why and sharing that. And that's music to our ears, I think. They have been in this industry for longer than I have. It's not working, so we need to change something. We need councils to be open to that, and we need senior management teams and elected members to allow for things to might not go how they were intended, but to still talk about it. I think everyone's a little bit scared when it's public money. Understandably, we're a bit scared to do something wrong and waste it. I guess I might argue.
I would love for some councils to do some stuff a bit controversial around the litter. I think they could. I think there's enough appetite there with people that you only need to look at some of the litter picking campaigns. The real food cafe at Tyndrum. They've got volunteers out every month, and the amount of stuff they're picking off the road benches is ridiculous. And I think I always think we should almost pick the litter and then leave the bags out for a few weeks and just to make it really obvious. But then in Ayrshire, then the seagulls will get to them.
I guess,
so, Anyway, this is turning into me ranting about litter again. I better move on. There was always that chance, wasn't there? There was always one thing I was going to say was, I know must be 4 or 5 years ago, South Ayrshire actually put a dedicated crew on for the weekend. And that crew is literally just to go and clear the litter bins up and down the coast. So
On the beaches, just,
so at
yeah.
least yeah, yeah. So when it is a really busy weekend, they're at least falling behind and clearing these bins and being visible out there and getting. And that was a huge change to them. And that I don't think it cost them. It just needed a bit of reorganisation in terms of how
Yeah, and I
they
think
were
we see that
structured and
quite a
set up.
lot. Yeah, we talk about one of the biggest issues in this sector is budgets. The depletion in the street scene or green space teams have been huge. Since about 10 years ago or so. But we have seen increasingly, whether it's more investment or just that shift in service, we're seeing these deep clean teams that are ring fenced completely, so they never get pulled away from that, deployed to different areas. If we're speaking to Edinburgh City Council not long ago about this service that are just sort of doing the rounds in a really, really visible way. They're not just litter picking, they're doing graffiti removal, they're doing the weeds. And it's deliberately meant to be very visual so that people are recognising that service, thanking the council, and seeing that change overnight or over a weekend or week. So I think that we're seeing more of that. I think that people are recognising that's quite a valuable part of what this needs to be.
Do you think we're between the main stakeholders? Do you think we're doing enough to shake up the pot? And I'm conscious it's a few years since the strategy came out that I always feel like I go to these conferences, I got told what the strategy is going to do, but I never get told what the strategy's actually done. That's me being really cynical.
I think we're about to move into year 4, so we're at the halfway part. So this is the time to be asking, I think. The one thing I have seen with the National Litter and Fly Tipping strategy is it feels like we all know who's doing what. The government have a role, KSB have a role, SEPA and Zero Waste Scotland are part of the core partners, and we have various forums now where people know they can bring either issues or ideas, whether it's on the data management side. We've got a citizen science forum, that's our volunteer interaction. We've got a community reference group, and there's a steering group with Transport Scotland, with Young Scot. So I feel like we're all talking more than we used to, and there's more coordination than there used to be. There's still room for movement there. And there has been that investment so that we have consolidated a website for community groups to use. We're now investing more in roadside litter, but again, we'd argue significantly more is still needed. And we have been looking at the data side of stuff to consolidate some of that too. So I think there has been shifts and there are things that we can say we've done as part of that strategy, but I think 100% more needs to be done. And that link across to the marine litter strategy is really important for me because a big part of that is prevention from land. So actually they need to be working together too.
Yeah. I was going to ask that. Can you maybe explain a little bit, if the listeners don't know about the marine strategy, how that works, what you're trying to do there?
Yeah, so the government's marine litter strategy launched a year before the National Litter and Fly Tipping strategy. Both now referencing each other. So there is, again, a steering group for that strategy, and it's got a range of objectives in tackling marine litter. And that includes from the beaches, working with industry, so fishing, aquaculture. But there's also a strand that is about preventing marine litter from ending up in the marine environment or back onto the coast and beaches. And for me, that's kind of where Keep Scotland Beautiful come in. We sit across both strategies. We're working with the public and local authorities across the whole country. And actually, we can be stopping the litter ending up in waterways or in drains and ending up out to sea. So for me, it's really good that there's the 2 strategies, and you can argue about litter, marine litter, fly tipping, and how they all sit together. But we have got 2 strategies that reference each other, and the same teams from each government sort of talk to each other and coordinate that.
Is it yourselves that are doing that project is it Arica? With the litter that's washing up there? There's a
We have in the
project at the
past.
moment with all the litter that's getting washed up the loch.
Absolutely, yeah. We did a bit of work last year to really raise awareness with school pupils across the Clyde Valley to let them know that litter dropped near them, near their school, could end up at Arica. And we sort of highlighted that 50% comes from that side and 50% comes from the Irish Sea. And so really trying to connect those dots between land-based litter and marine litter. We challenged them to an art competition, and some of them got to visit Arica at the end of it to really see for themselves the issues there.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I know for years and years I helped with it was part of the annual spring clean. The Rotary Club of Ayr does the beach clean for the River Ayr coastal path. So every so often I would get tasked to go to whatever beach it was with a group of volunteers. And to start with, you were going to beaches and you hardly had to move before you were picking up litter. But then latterly, some of the beaches were actually that clean. It was a real, when the kids found a bit of litter, it was like, yeah, we found a bit sort of thing. And I think that was partly because people were in the way of, they were doing the annual litter pick. And then if they
Mm-hmm.
were watching that beach, they were just picking as they went anyway. So you ended up with this thing where the beach was actually getting picked fairly regularly by a whole range of people. But I remember going to one section that was very rarely visited, down just north of Girvan. And as you say, you could literally have sat in the corner and just fill
Yeah.
bag upon bag upon bag of rubbish, that obviously accumulated over a long, long time. But,
Yeah, and
you
I
know,
think we have there's hundreds of groups across Scotland who are doing that now and allowing for some of these places to be
yeah,
relatively litter free or for not to be littered for that long because they're
yeah.
doing their weekly community cleanup. But
Hmm.
as you just highlighted there are still areas that need a sort of a
Yeah.
deep clean of many volunteers and many hours of time.
Hmm. So the big spring clean, how many people are involved? What sort of range of activities happen across
I
Scotland?
think so far this year we're sat at about 12,000 so far, but we want to get to. I'd like to get to over 40,000 this year. Last
Yeah,
year we had 35,000, so we're really hoping we can bust that and get closer to the 50 or 40.
yeah.
And it is everyone. For me, the spring clean is about we work with local authorities so they can support people on the ground. They're doing deep cleans. The road operating companies are doing deep cleans at the start of the spring clean, and then we have volunteers and schools and youth groups doing it
Mm.
throughout as well. And businesses, actually, it's worth saying, a lot of businesses try and take part. So it is about everyone taking action and celebrating that it's volunteer action that's helping
Yeah.
keep the country as clean as we can keep it.
And is that quantified in terms of what they're picking? Is it quantified in terms? Again, I remember back to the coastal path clean. It was like you had to, at the end of the day, you had to count the bags you picked. Because if you went back and reported to Jimmy Begg that you hadn't counted them, you were in trouble.
Yeah, we ask for bag counts, and then when we can, we try and get weights. We know that's another step for
Yeah,
volunteers to take,
yeah.
but it is for me about understanding both the weights and counts, and then all
Mhm.
the other items that you find that don't fit into bags alongside that.
Yeah, yeah. But what about the other side? So I see there's a local group here, and I think they come out every Thursday. They just do along the street from me, and it's they're, from being honest, they're fairly elderly, and they're out there consistently in whatever weather picking up litter, and I'll guarantee week after week they're still picking up a bag of litter from the same spot. And to me, that a bit of that says you're actually just enabling the bad behaviour of the people that drop in the litter in the first place. And I know that's maybe a bit of a negative view, but it's like, sometimes I think we need to let the stuff pile up for people to see how bad it is.
I have pitched that before. 1 year rather than a spring clean, everyone ceases.
Collection.
But yeah, yeah, but that's not going to happen, I don't think. But I'd
But, why-
love,
but,
yeah.
why, but why not? Why not? Why
Yeah,
won't we?
yeah. The environmental damage then done, I think, is a bit terrifying to see. And then the fact that we don't have to go out afterward and do an even deeper clean. But I do,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it is that, so something else needs to change there. And I think that's where we need that prevention piece, or having that deterrent to showcase that it can't be done and it's been seen. And I
Mhm.
do think there's something in highlighting that we still get this myth about, oh, don't do that, the council does that, you're taking jobs away.
Oh,
About highlighting that
yeah.
actually no, it's a volunteer, it's your gran, your mum, your brother, your niece, your nephew. It's someone you might know taking the effort to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not always convinced we do enough about they're just nudging the shopkeepers, the pubs. There's pubs in here that you walk by on a Monday morning, pavement outside's full of cigarette butts. And I don't think we're doing enough to just, when they're going in doing their environmental health inspection.
Mm.
By the way, if you actually provide a facility for smokers outside your premises, and that type of thing to just try and change that behaviour and just push it up the awareness of people that
Mhm.
it is an issue that they need to deal with.
Yeah, and that is something, I guess, with some forms of litter, not smoking, unfortunately, but the extended producer responsibility. They're paying, for some of that to be dealt with, but we're calling for that to be extended to litter, to ground and
Mhm.
bin litter. So the producers, for packaging, that would solve some of the issues are actually going to be paying more. And it's about them paying for the service, but actually it should also be incentivizing them to produce less so they're not
Yeah.
paying as much. So it kind of it should be both things. And I think that there's an avenue there that we'd love the government to go down. The Welsh government are currently consulting on it. So we think that there's a big opportunity there to really invest in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, was there, I can't remember if it was yourselves or Keep Britain Tidy did some work about the most littered items and so on, the most common brand names that were top of the league for littering.
Yeah, we don't do brand counts, but yeah, so recently Surfers Against Sewage released their sort of brand count data.
Yeah.
And again, part of the producers paying for the litter needs to be about understanding which brands might be more common rather than it being like an even keel. So no, yeah, seeing those brand counts, to really nudge them and challenge them on what they're doing to the environment and what they're making authorities and volunteers have to clean up and deal with.
Yeah. And I think some of the names that were on top of that list were fairly big, wealthy
Yeah, yeah.
companies, if I remember correctly.
And it's the other companies that own quite a lot of companies that you don't realize
Yeah,
sometimes, isn't
yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah. So there you go. And what about eco schools?
Yeah,
Is
so as
that
part of the Eco Schools program, one of the topics that I think a lot of schools do tackle is litter and waste. And so as part
Mhm.
of the Spring Clean, we have live lessons open to schools to sort of set them the challenge and talk to them about litter. And we know schools, particularly primary schools, are really engaged with going out to do a litter pick. Um, and are quite good at sometimes wagging their fingers at their friends and family when they do something wrong. There's a big part here about, when we get to secondary school, how do we keep kids engaged and we make sure it doesn't look cool to litter? And I know that's one of the challenge areas for us. And that lunchtime litter, when they all go out and grab their lunches, there's quite often an issue following that. And how do we mitigate against that as well?
Mm. I just remember back to my eldest son's school days when he was sent out in a litter pick, and they were obviously weighing the material, and the challenge was to get as much as possible. So he used his initiative, as he thought, to put a few bricks in the bottom of his bags. So his bags were obviously heavier, which probably messed up your data, but that was a challenge at times. So you can't really account for stuff like that. But is the
No, you
eco
can't.
skills still as active as ever? Is it still
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, we still have the team sort of looking. It sort of falls under the Climate Action Schools program now,
Mhm.
but it's still eco schools. They still get their green flag, and
Yeah.
litter and waste is still a very popular topic for them to pick.
Yeah, I know. I was talking to two teachers recently from a primary school in Ayrshire, and they'd done the South Ayrshire's doing a lot of on food waste recycling, and they did a big focus
Yes.
on food waste the school was producing. And what it turned out was the reason they were producing a lot of food waste was the kids were getting so much for their snack. They were getting jumbo bags of crisps. They were then getting to a lunch and then not eating the lunch. So the school actually wrote to all the parents and said, your kid doesn't need a jumbo bag of crisps for their snack, and in the morning. They just had their breakfast like 2 hours ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Stop giving them as much food, and they did get a bit of flack for it. But since then, they managed to show a reduction in their food waste.
Oh, I haven't seen that. That's really cool,
Yeah,
actually. Yeah,
so
you
they've
do you
not.
eat constantly as a kid.
Yeah, they've not published it, but
No,
they were
no.
just like they were just when they were looking at the how do we make this, how do you show an improvement?
Hmm.
I said, well, why aren't the kids eating at lunchtime? They're not eating at lunchtime because they're getting too much food.
There you go.
So
There you go.
and that's saving the parents money as well. It's like
Yeah, well, no, exactly.
it's
Win-win.
it's it's all mad. So. Okay, so anything else KSB's doing that listeners might not be aware of?
Well, I think, we are working sort of to change policy. We are working with community groups, we work with councils, but there are some things that we do believe, need to be sort of top down, I guess. So, we're looking forward to the deposit return scheme and the impact that could have on litter. And for me, yes, it should sort of tackle the plastic bottles and cans, but I'm really interested in seeing whether that sort of helps with other littered items and whether it sort of places a value on all waste to individuals, but then also in people having the practice of holding on to an item and taking it back could other things become returned, like
Mm,
cups, for instance? So I think for us that's something that really will shift in this space in the future. I mean, we've got
mhm.
a year and a half still, but we
Uh,
will be looking ahead to that, I think.
I'm not. My sort of views on deposit return. I've got mixed feelings about deposit return because I think it's going to really affect council collections in terms of, and personally, if I've got stuff that's recycled, I put it in my recycling bin. I don't
Mhm.
need I don't need 20 pence reward for that.
You
And
know,
I,
and yeah, we've done some studies. We were working in Strathclyde Union New College, Lanarkshire, and what was really interesting, I thought, was again, this goes back to sometimes we try and simplify things too much for consumers and individuals. Because actually, when we deployed an RVM, the students were like, "Oh, there's recycling bins. Why do we need that?" And
aye,
again, it's about explaining. Well, some people don't, for one thing, but actually, it's about that cleaner stream. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I found it really interesting that actually people did go, well, we collected it at the house and there's bins over there, so why do we need yet another
yeah.
mechanism for that? But the reality is, unfortunately, not everyone, not everyone
Yeah, no,
does
absolutely.
recycle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, and I think the other challenge I think I've got is if somebody's going to lob a can out the window, I'm not necessarily thinking they're going to do it because they get stop doing it because they're going to get 20 pence back. But that's I'm maybe being a bit cynical about it. I think deposit return scheme. I think if you could have a hybrid between deposit returns on the street and be able to scan your waste and put it in your own
Yes.
recycling
Yeah.
bin. I think that'd be the way forward. And pushing everything to I've got to bundle up my cans and stuff and take it to a supermarket is I think a bit of a backward step in some ways.
Mhm.
So
No, and
anyway,
yeah, no, completely.
I was going to say that's totally off the topic of litter and
Yeah,
getting
sorry,
into it and doing it,
sorry.
but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's fine. That's all.
Yeah,
That's
well, it
all.
could have an
That's all
impact.
good. That's all good. You mentioned there last couple of questions. You mentioned there the reusable cup initiative,
Mm.
and that's been rolled out in Glasgow predominantly, I think.
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in Glasgow, and then we did a bit of work in the Highlands as well on a return pilot too.
Yeah. And how successful, or is it too early to tell?
No, so the Borrow Cup, that's the one that recently closed in or finished in Glasgow. There's a report done on that, and it was a success. You know, a lot of cups were returned and used again. But I think we've sort of got to where it comes to cups is more is needed. You know, it really, really needs the baristas, the brands, and the shops to step up and almost make it default rather than an option.
Mm,
So I think we've got a sort of recycling sort of pilot about to be launched in Edinburgh soon. But I think what we want to do at the end of the year is probably take stock in some of this. You know, we've done a lot of trials, we've invested in it, we've worked with brands, we've worked with independents, and yet nothing has stuck in the way that we need it or want it to. So we really, really do believe that we need the single-use cup charge to come into force to sort of tip
mm,
that balance away, sort of more than sort of some of the campaigns and projects we've trialed in the past has.
mm. You can tell it's not huge. I do like my coffee, and I have been known to stop at coffee shops, but I generally do have my reusable cup with me.
Yeah.
And the reaction you get is it's not a it's quite rare. You can tell it's quite
Mhm.
rare that again handed a cup to because half the time I've used it already, so it needs a wee rinse or whatever.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I'm not a fuss, but they always insist on giving a wee rinse out. But that it's almost like this strange man bringing a cup to me. We've already got cups here. We're throwing out, and I think it's just a It's a numbers game with the cups. It's just massive, massive
Mhm.
number of cups into that are used. So
And I think
yeah,
it's just so ingrained now that
yeah,
you take a cup and as soon as you're finished you get rid of it. That
yeah,
whereas I do believe there's more people who could learn to remember to bring their cup, or can then learn it's okay to nip to the bathroom and quickly rinse it out, and that's good
yeah.
enough given you're
I,
about to put a hot coffee in there.
I, I personally think there's a huge health angle you could tap into here because I don't think people understand the amount of microplastics they're getting through their disposable coffee cup. It's had cups lined with plastic, and they're just getting
Mhm.
a whole load of microplastics into the body that they probably don't want or need. And I think if
No,
people start
completely.
awareness about that, would then start changing that behaviour. So
And I think, yeah, weirdly enough, it's the opposite right now. People think there's hygiene issues with
yeah,
potentially the crockery or
aye,
your
aye,
reusable cup. So I think
yeah.
there's that is one of the spaces that that needs more thought. And we've done
Mm,
trials, we've worked with the brands. It needs something else now to make it, well, to
mhm.
solve the problem.
I still think, the Scottish Government did a ban on plastic teaspoons and that sort of thing. I think they totally missed a trick in saying you're not allowed to use disposable plates, cups, whatever, inside a premise.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the fact you can go into a Starbucks and you get handed you've got China mugs in the background and they'll hand you a takeaway cup in a premise.
Yeah, and there's some places that don't even have the option of crockery.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I agree. And I think part of the sort of consultation on that potential charge was under what circumstances would we allow, and that, yeah, for me there should be, if you're sitting in, why would you ever need something that's single use?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, moving back to litter, what are the big challenges and opportunities? We know what the big challenges are. We've spent the last 40 minutes talking about
Yes.
what are the opportunities. Do you genuinely think we're getting someplace? Are we making progress?
I think we've got, with the various mechanisms hopefully coming into force over the next few years, we could see change, so long as they all happen, I guess. So the deposit return scheme's one cut that should hopefully alleviate a big pressure of cans and bottles. And as I've said, I'm hoping that might change other behaviours too. We will keep calling for a single-use cup charge, and hopefully that moves people away from the sort of single-use cups that are, again, a heavily littered item. And then we've called on that extension to packaging, extended producer responsibility, to have the producers, invest in this, and that should invest in local councils, but also organisations like ours to work with people and councils to challenge this behaviour.
Mhm.
So I think there's some things coming up. I mean, they're all 2+ years away, but hopefully that we're talking about it more and more, and people are angry
Mhm.
about it. It's getting coverage on radio. So I think we just need people to keep talking about it and keep getting angry, I guess, sometimes too.
I know for a fact we have some very avid listeners. They're very, very strong views in this, and they will be saying, we had this 20 years
Yeah.
ago. We had this
Yeah.
30 years ago. We're 2 years away from it and we're not, and I think my views probably shifted over the years to say that I think we need to be much more, if you like, ambitious, but also confrontational about it. And as you said earlier, you know, somehow working that we can actually, there is enforcement out there. It's a bit
Yeah.
like speeding in the road. If people don't think they're going to get caught, they'll speed. If people don't think they're going to get caught littering, they'll litter.
Yeah, I think
So,
the enforcement is something we would love. We would love people not to litter because they just
mm,
want to do good for the environment and they just know it's the wrong thing. But the
yeah,
reality is, unfortunately, we've got people out there who need the stick, need
yeah,
to be fined and see that they're going to be fined, and then use
yeah,
that as a deterrent. So yeah, I think for me, there needs to be that sort of suite of
yeah,
approaches that includes a stick.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to give you a magic wand. What would you like to do with it to address litter? What would you be your one thing you could do?
I think if it was a truly magic wand, I'm making myself redundant, aren't I? I'm
Yeah,
making
absolutely.
people just be good people and good citizens, and sort of, yeah, that's what a real magic wand would do. But I guess what I really would love to see happen is that that pride in local spaces increase again, and working to really introduce people to their
Mm,
neighbourhoods, to their local community, and engage with one another. I think that could solve not only litter problems but some wider societal problems too.
mm,
Um, Other than that, you're sort of talking about very specific sources or very specific items and behaviours, that we're trying to tackle as we go day to day.
yeah. I think one of the things we touched on earlier on, that everybody complains about the council, but half the time it's not the council owns the land, so you've got to, litter affects all
Mhm.
landowners, whether it's the Lidl car park or the Asda car park or whatever, it equally applies to them as well. And then there's big areas of land that are not really actively managed as such, parks and countryside and so on. So yeah, real big challenge, isn't it?
Well, I think, yeah, the councils, you're right, councils are the sort of first sort of set of organisations that we turn to blame.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yes, I don't know what percentage they own, but it will be the vast majority, I take it. But yeah, there's other duty bodies out there. There's, as you
yeah.
said, private landowners, businesses, and no one's holding them to account. No one's going, "Oh, actually, every day I'm here, there's this issue." So how do we turn that table as well?
Yeah, good. So in terms of just last question. You've always had a successful career in the sector. What's your advice for a younger you joining the environmental waste management sector?
Yeah, I think the sector. Well, I think specifically waste and litter. I've sort of said it before. Litter is quite often you think you want to get into, or you want to get into the environmental sector. Litter is the sort of unglamorous, unsexy little brother of all the other topics often in this space. And I think for us, we have a role at KSB about raising awareness of the importance of litter and how much people care about this issue. We do polling every year, and consistently 90% of people say there's a problem nationally and they want more to be done. So I think we have a role to play in making this a sector people want to get into and are maybe more familiar with. But for me, if you told me I'd be in campaigns, which is, a lot of comms, I would have gone, no chance. I hated English in school. I'm not a good writer. I'm quite a superficial reader, I think. So I think for me it is that, the roles at Keep Scotland Beautiful, and I guess other organisations allow you to see a lot of different areas and figure out what you actually like to do in the real world. So we do policy, we do sort of comms, PR, stakeholder engagement, surveying, data analysis. And I think sort of those initial years, it should be about just doing a bit of everything to figure out what you actually can do in the real world and what you're good at and what you like. Because I think you could think you like something and you can think you're good at something, but until you're in a professional environment, you don't quite know what's out there yet, I don't think. So yeah, I'd say take chances. Take chances at the start and do a bit of everything. Say yes.
And there's opportunities to volunteer for KSB as well, isn't there? Through the network.
They can be for us, or also the community groups who are doing so much sort of with us. There's opportunities there. And we quite often, we are recruiting fairly frequently potentially. So I think I would tell people to keep an eye out. And quite often the roles that Keep Scotland Beautiful are sort of relatively entry-level sort of roles that you can come in and sort of get that experience across and then figure out from there where you want to be at KSB or beyond.
Yeah, there you go. And that's good advice. Thank you. So that's me used up all. Well, I've not actually used up all my questions. I could keep talking about litter and fly tipping for a long time, but probably I'll have bored the listeners by now. So we better finish up at that. So thank you ever so much for all your time.
No, thanks for having us on, Alasdair.
No bother. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you again next Thursday at 4 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share with friends, and send us your feedback at hello@rubbishtalk.co.uk.